Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Stotra Sata Shishmaras Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astotra Sata Shishmaras Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Nanti Kode Vaishnavindi Ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki the Tagore Permanande. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Can someone give me a Srimad Bhagavatam, please? Thank you. Okay, so we're on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, Text 26. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Evam pravrittasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmekenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tataha Evam Pravrittasya Sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tataha. Prabhujis. Evam pravritasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tataha. Evam pravritasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tata. Evam pravrittasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tata. Evam pravritasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tataha. Matajis? Anyone? Evam pravritasya sada Bhutanam Shreyasi Dvijaha Sarvatmakenapi Yada Natushadridhayam Tataha. Word meanings. Evam, thus. Pravritasya, one who is engaged in. Sada, always. Bhutanam, of the living beings. Shreyasi, in the ultimate good. Dvijaha, O twice born. Sarvatmakena api, by all means. Yada, when. Na, not. Atushat, become satisfied. Hridayam, mind. Tataha, at that. Translation: O twice-born brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Please repeat after me. O twice-born brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-around welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. Om Agyantimidandasa Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanyamanoਭishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gudo Shiyutapatakamelam Shri Gudun Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Dhupam Sagrajatam Sahaganadaganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vashakanvitam Shcha Hey Krishna Kudana Sandho Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Godangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Site Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpadadubhyascha Kripa Sandhubhya Evacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srinivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we see that Krishna's main concern, his hankering, is that he wants all of the conditioned souls within material existence to go back to Godhead and to reestablish their relationship with him. He yearns for this, he hankers for this. In fact, so much so that the individuals in the spiritual world who are perfectly content to be there with him eternally in bliss, they actually come to this world. Our acharyas, many of them have descended from the spiritual world just to fulfill this hankering in Krishna's heart. It's a very esoteric understanding of our relationship with Krishna. Is if we want to please Krishna, we have to try to somehow or other bring the conditioned souls of this world back to his lotus feet. And Krishna, you've ever seen like a fisherman, like in a river, like the river Ganges or something? They throw out these big nets, right? And they're just trying to catch as many fish as they can. So Krishna also throws out a big net into the material world in the form of the Vedas. And you'll see if you look at a net, it's kind of shaped like a pyramid, right? Like you have Krishna's hand is at the top of the net, and that is extending outward from his hand as far as possible into the waters of material existence, looking for the fish. That's us, right? All of us here, this is actually, you can almost picture the temple room as a big net, and we're all kind of fish caught in Krishna's net. He's pulling us upwards towards him into the spiritual world. And at the top of the net, where Krishna's hand is, that's where Bhakti Yoga is, right? This net, in a sense, is the yoga ladder. It's the various systems of yoga which lead towards Krishna, by which Krishna is bringing us to him. And so, up by Krishna's hand is the process of Bhakti Yoga. Yoginam api sarvesham madgitenantaratmanaha shadavan bhajate yomam. Right, absorbing in Krishna, completely thinking about Krishna in devotion, trying to serve Krishna with the mercy and protection of the spiritual master. So, and when you're very near that hand of Krishna on the net, you can see it very clearly. You can see there's 5 fingers, right? Krishna has a very beautiful hand. It's sort of bluish on top and reddish on the bottom. It has the various symbols, that we're familiar with. But then as you go down further on the net, further away from Krishna's hand, you have other systems of yoga, such as Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. And when you're down on the net, sort of halfway down, and you look up towards Krishna's hand, you see the Supersoul. You see Krishna in relationship to matter, right? He's the Lord and Master of material energy, pervading all the various atoms, etc., in between the atoms. And then as you even get further down the net, towards the bottom of the net, this is sort of the Jnana Kand, right? The Jnana Yoga practices, Karma Yoga practices. If you look up towards Krishna's hand from that level, all you see is a blazing effulgence, just a white light, which is blinding. Sukasya ikanti kasya cha is the Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Krishna is the origin of the Brahman effulgence. And it's the realm of eternal happiness, transcendental happiness, the highest happiness. And then also, sort of at the very fringe of that net, Krishna is trying to attract even more conditioned souls to him and bring them closer and closer to his hand, right? From which he pulls them out of the net and places them in the spiritual world. And so at the fringe of that net, Krishna has placed various lures. Have you ever seen fishermen using lures, like people that do fly fishing in a river or something? It's like a little piece of metal that's shaped kind of in a bent way, almost like a corkscrew. And the fisherman will throw it into the water, and then he'll kind of, move the fishing pole to make it jump and kind of reel in the slack and do it again and reel in the slack. And it makes the lure move through the water like a fish, right? And so when the big fish see that, they become greedy. They're ruled by the tongue. And they chase after it and they grab it, and then it comes right out of their lip, right? And the fisherman's very happy. So Krishna has attached various lures to the bottom of this yoga net. And that's the Karmakand section of the Vedas. Because as you've noticed, I'm sure, the vast majority of living entities in this world have no interest in spiritual life whatsoever. The vast majority of living entities are just absorbed in sense gratification, totally lost, as we were, in the darkness of ignorance, in a dream. Right? Just immersed in the body and bodily consciousness, trying to gratify the ego and the senses. And so when they see these lures in the form of the Karmakand section of the Vedas, in the form of the flowery words of the Vedas, which describe the heavenly planets and opulence within this world, they become attracted. But it's a trick by Krishna to grab them and hook them onto the system of yoga. Because essentially by being absorbed in this Karmakand section of the Vedas, they associate with devotees ultimately, and associate with Brahmanas. They participate in the Vedic culture, right? They develop the Brahminical qualities, and in this way they become qualified to actually hear topics of Krishna. The gross materialist, he becomes conditioned with Vedic culture and Vedic knowledge, and then when he hears the message of the personality of Godhead, or even the systems of yoga, he becomes attracted to that. So that's the whole purpose of that. Now those of us who are on the higher level of the net, those of us who are up there by Krishna's hand, we have to be careful not to be attracted by these different lures that Krishna has placed for materialists, right? Imam pushpatam vacham pravadanti avipashtataha, right? Veda vadadata parta nainyad astati vadanaha. There are individuals that think those lures at the bottom of the net for materialists are all that the Vedas are about. Those are the Veda Vadarata. And so for gross materialists, that section of the Vedas is uplifting. It's bringing them closer to Krishna. But for those on the systems of yoga, especially up there in Bhakti Yoga, if you turn around and become drawn to those lures, you're moving away from Krishna. Therefore, Krishna warns us again and again not to become attracted to the Karmakand section of the Vedas, not to become attracted to that lure which is meant to attract conditioned souls upward. So why does Krishna do this? Why does he establish this sort of path for materialists to become attracted to the Vedas and to him ultimately? Well, that's sort of like his bridge preaching. We've seen different devotees, will try with different levels of success to present Krishna consciousness in a way that is sort of meeting people halfway, right? Very few people are interested in Krishna. In fact, it's even mentioned in the Bhagavatam, like Prabhupada mentions in various places, you have to have a certain pre-qualification to really be able to hear Bhagavatam properly. And we ourselves don't even have it, really. We're sort of cultivating, speaking to myself, we're sort of cultivating the qualification to hear properly. And without that qualification, you don't really access the nectar of Krishna. and you don't access the higher subjects of the Vedas. So sometimes devotees, will try to package Krishna consciousness in a way that materialists will be interested. They already have an interest in something, cooking or astrology or whatever it may be, and then devotees try to speak about that, but inject little topics of Krishna. And so, that's kind of what the Karmakon section is. Krishna presents a whole culture of materialism, but in a way that people are gradually drawn upwards towards them. He gives them something they're interested in, and then in following their own interests, then they come in contact with him. And so you see that Krishna has extended this net into the material world to attract gross materialists, as well as to attract yogis, and ultimately to bring people to the level of devotional service. So Srila Vyasadeva, now he's an incarnation of Krishna. He's a Shaktivesh avatar. He's empowered specifically to extend this net into Kali Yuga. And that's what we're hearing about in this particular section. The Vedic literatures are essentially that same net of Krishna. It's there in terms of like a transcendental vibration as the Yajur Veda, and there's a whole culture going in the previous yugas, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. It's there, but in Kali Yuga, people are so fallen that if we don't write it down, it will be lost. Therefore, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, he takes that sound vibration and puts it into written words. And then, as we've heard in the last few verses, he established disciplic successions, paramparas coming from himself. They're called shakas, or branches. Just like if you imagine a tree kind of branching out in all directions. Like in the wintertime, the trees don't have leaves, and you can really see all the branches going in directions. So these shakas come from him. He's like the root of the tree. And then he's given he divided the Vedas into 4, and he gave each of the Vedas to a prominent disciple and sage. Prabhupada calls them professors. And then they established various systems of teaching them, right? Like each particular shaka or school specialized in a certain part of the Vedas. So I wanted to recommend, if devotees want to learn more about those shakas, this Samskars book by the GBC. International. There's in the introduction, there's a whole explanation of how the Vedas come down and what these different shakas are and stuff like that. So, but just very quickly, just a few words on that, is that you have essentially these different schools. They would have different sections of the Veda that they specialize in. And so, for example, say you're born into you're a Brahmin born into the Taittiriya school, which is one of the shakas. So you would be trained up first as a brahmachari. You would chant what's called the Samhita, where you'd memorize. First of all, you'd be initiated into the Brahma Gayatri. That's like, your initiation into the parampara. And then you would be, as a brahmachari, you would learn very thoroughly the Vedas. You would learn to memorize them, right? At the proper pronunciation and all these different things. And then as a householder, you would learn the Brahmanas, which are a certain section of the Vedas dealing with how to perform rituals, how to practice cleanliness, how to perform sacrifices, and that would accompany your household life. And then as a Vanaprast, you would learn the Aranyakas, which is basically those same rituals of sacrifice that you've been performing for the past 25 years or so. Now you're learning the deeper metaphysical meaning behind it, sort of the true spiritual purposes behind it. And then finally, sort of the crowning scriptures of the Vedas, you are to study the Upanishads. And that's specifically when you're preparing for sannyas, right? When you're preparing to leave the material world and strive for moksha, you study the Upanishads. Now, for most people, especially in Kali Yuga, it's very difficult to go through this path. And therefore, as we heard in the previous verse, Stri, Shudra, Dvija Bandhu, most people in Kali Yuga, as Sura Prabhu was emphasizing yesterday, were totally unqualified for this kind of strict, rigorous path of Vedic upbringing. There's also a whole culture that goes with it as well. And therefore, what Srila Vyasadeva has done is he's taken these lessons from the Samhita, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, and he's put them in the form of entertainment. Right? That's what the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and the Puranas as well. It's basically these same very intricate teachings which are there and come down in these schools. He takes them and he turns them into stories. Right? He tells whole stories, and then he interjects within there certain lessons from various parts. Here's like an Upanishad lesson. Here's a Brahmana lesson. Here's an Aranyaka lesson. Right? In fact, if you read in the Mahabharata, like just in the very beginning of the Mahabharata, just to give an example of this, there's a story of Uttanka, and I won't go into the whole story or anything like that, but this great sage Uttanka, he was trying to get these earrings from a queen. And at one point, he goes to see the queen, and he walks into her quarters, and she can't see him, or he can't see her. She's totally invisible. So he goes to the king, and he asks, where is she? I couldn't see her. And then the king asks, are you clean? Did you clean yourself after eating? And he says, no, I was in a hurry, I forgot. So, he explained, you can't see the queen unless you're totally pure, unless you followed the rituals properly. So in the middle of this whole discussion of like this adventure of Uttanka getting these earrings, then he sits down and performs achaman. And it gives the whole instruction, how to perform achaman, how to drink it from this part of your hand, and how much water, and it's basically the same thing we do here, right? In fact, ours is even a little more complex, like touching the eyes and the mouth and the ears and all that. I mean, he just touches the side of his cheeks, right? So, but the same principle of achaman is there. So for most people, they're not going to sit down and read the achaman paper we have on the wall. Most, like, for example, your average person in Kali Yuga has no interest in that. But if you embed it within a story, then they'll hear about achaman. And not only that, but the main principle, achaman's a detail. The main principle is cleaning your mouth after you eat, right? Like you shouldn't just, you're eating some sabji and then you're walking around like a gorilla with, sabji all over your hand, right? And all over your feet and your mouth, walking into the temple room. In fact, it mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion, it mentions you should wash your hands, mouth, and feet before you enter the temple after eating, right? So you're not like trekking sabji through or something like that, right? A big trail of khichdi following you like a snail into the temple room. So the main principle is you should clean, after you eat. So you'll see this is something perhaps you'd find in the Brahmana section of the Vedic literatures, the ritual cleanliness associated with a culture surrounding sacrifice, right? And then, of course, in the Mahabharata, also, there's another interesting point in that same section. After getting the earrings, the king feeds him, and then he finds that not only is the food cold, but there's a hair in the food. So he actually curses the king, and there's this counter cursing back and forth. So what this is showing us is the importance of, serving hot food and serving it when it's clean, no hair and stuff like that. And that's something we honor for the deities, right? Like when you serve the deities, these same principles should be there. The food should be very hot, like steaming hot. We see when Srila Prabhupada, when disciples would cook for him, he would demand that the puris be puffed up and like rushed. The cooks, they would puff up Prabhupada's puri or chapati and be running with it, right? And like steam coming out the top, and they're like passing it off like a marathon in the Olympics. Take it and then try to put it onto his plate within a few seconds of coming off the fire, right? So that's the proper way to actually serve someone. And if you serve someone like the spiritual master, if you just serve him a bunch of cold prasadam, sorry Gurudev, didn't know when you're going to eat, and just kind of, here's what we got for you. It shows a kind of neglect, It's a little disrespectful. And so there's that principle there, as well as hair. Like yesterday I was cleaning the refrigerator in the Didi kitchen and like washing the inside and stuff. And I found hairs inside. Ooh, gosh, where does this come from, right? So that's something, in other words, in these Mahabharata and these different literatures, they're showing us the importance of avoiding that. If you put food in your spiritual master or hair in your spiritual master's food, it's considered like very offensive and neglectful. So we shouldn't do that for Krishna either. You never want to have, you're bringing prasadam to Krishna and there's hair in it. It's considered, in other words, that literature is showing us the degree at which that is offensive, or it's something to be avoided. You have to be conscious of it. So the Mahabharata is then taking these types of lessons and putting them in the form of a story which is entertaining to people. And of course, the central teaching of the Mahabharata, you might say like the Upanishad level teaching of the Mahabharata, is the Bhagavad Gita, Gita Upanishad. Right? That's where you have pure spiritual knowledge inserted right within this fantastic story. And Prabhupada says that, he'll say it in the next chapter actually, that the essential verse within the Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharmam Prityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Right? So that's really the essential teaching of all the Upanishads as well. And it's packaged for the average person. In other words, if you look at this entire text of the Mahabharata, that's the actual central verse, or the most important principle in Mahabharata, is Sarva Dharmam Prityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. You see, so the entire teachings of the Vedas are there within Mahabharata. Now, Srila Vyasadeva has written all this. He's done all this. He's established this whole system, both for people that can follow strictly and for people that will better ingest these lessons through entertainment. But still, he's not happy. And that's what we're hearing about in today's verse. Right? There's a dissatisfaction there. And we may experience this too. Like if you've done some bridge preaching, you're teaching cooking classes or something like that, and you talk about Krishna a little bit, but people are not so interested. Maybe they're more distracted by other things. Then you may also kind of walk away feeling, geez, I kind of like, what's going on here? I wish I could just talk about Krishna. And that would be so much nicer, right? Like, what's going on? Why am I not happy? And that's what Vyasadeva is feeling. Why am I not happy? And Prabhupada mentions, and it's mentioned in the verses as well, that what he's done is fantastic. Like he's a great scholar, his presentation, both in the form of the Itihasas, Puranas, Mahabharata, and both as the Vedic literature and the Vedic system itself, all of this is perfect. It's fantastic. And yet he's not satisfied. And so Narada Muni will come, and Narada Muni is fantastic. He's an incarnation of Bhakti Yoga, practically, right? It's coming from the heart of Brahma. And so he immediately understands what the problem is. And he says there's two things. Number one is that the soul can only be satisfied in contact with Krishna, right? Like the living entity, basically, we're passing through many, many lifetimes and is suffering in material existence, and we're looking for something. We're trying to find something. We're hankering after something. And no matter what material energy we give ourselves, like the giving the fish the bicycle or whatever, right? No matter what we give ourselves, we'll never be satisfied. No matter what we talk about, no matter what we hear, shotavasya, shutasya cha, right? No matter what we hear in the material world, no matter what we absorb in, no matter what we try to enjoy, it will never give us happiness. It will never give us satisfaction. Because the soul can only be satisfied in contact with Krishna and performing a loving relationship with Krishna. And therefore, because you've done this kind of indirect presentation, you're not satisfied because you can't be. No one can be unless you're directly in contact with Krishna. Right? That's the only thing that can satisfy you as a soul, is devotional service. So that's why you're ultimately unhappy. And then on another level, like basically what you've described, because you've given, described this kind of karmakon section of the Vedas, you've given a space for people to practice material life within a set of religious system. They'll become distracted by that. Because of their own, dharmasya glani, their own materialistic tendencies, they'll use you as an authority, as a kind of justification for their materialistic life. And not only that, but it will become very sinful. At some point in the future, Narada Muni predicts, or Prabhupada indicates that Narada Muni is predicting, even the whole system of animal sacrifice will get out of hand. Right? It'll become very destructive. Even the Buddha had to appear in order to disassociate the Vedas, right? Disassociate from the Vedas because it was so destructive and horrific. And under the name of religion, it became like a slaughterhouse. So you've basically given an impetus for people to misuse spiritual life. Also, there's the idea that when you don't directly present Krishna, like when you speak about material subjects, which are the Vyasa Tirtha, right, the pilgrimage place for crows, then it encourages materialism within people, right? Like Prabhupada actually mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that it's in the 13th chapter when it's discussing ahimsa as one of the principles of knowledge, Prabhupada mentions there that just simply not killing things, not killing people or animals, that's not just nonviolence. Nonviolence means essentially not giving them Krishna. Like if you speak to someone on the material platform and you inject them with material sound vibration, you're cultivating within them material consciousness. And so that's a kind of violence, And so therefore, this spiritual persons, or those practitioners of transcendental knowledge, must be careful to always interact with people by giving them transcendental knowledge. Otherwise, you're actually harming them. You're increasing their duration of life and material existence. So, Srila Vyasadeva, for these reasons, he's not feeling satisfied with what he's done. So Narada Muni makes it very clear that you should just directly glorify and explain Krishna. Just present Krishna as he is. Boom! Like Prabhupada says, Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is like the direct Krishna. This is not, through a filter. All right? And so this is what Srila Vyasadeva does. And this is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is. He takes that pure principle of devotion, that pure principle of Krishna, which is the very heart of the Vedas, which is the very source of the light of the Vedas. Everything that you find of quality within the Vedas, within the Vedic literatures, within Vedic culture, it's all simply the glaring effulgence of Krishna, the person, the personality of Godhead. And therefore, when Srila Vyasadeva presents the Srimad Bhagavatam, you see even on the cover here, we have Krishna in Goloka, right, shining out very beautifully. This is actually the very essence of the Vedas right there. This is the Veda Sar. It's the essential light of the Vedas is coming directly from the personality of Godhead. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is an exposition. It's stories, as we've heard, along with spiritual instruction, but it's stories directly of the incarnations of Krishna. And it's stories of Krishna's pure devotees, those who serve him in an unalloyed devotion, right? Gana karma dhanavratam, not covered by any kind of karma or gyan. It's simply the desire to serve and please Krishna for Krishna's pleasure and nothing else, just to give happiness to Krishna. You see, so it's a presentation of the pure devotional love of the bhaktas, as well as Krishna's divine reciprocation in the most beautiful and glorious ways. So it is the highest Vedic literature that there is. It's the highest vibration that you can experience. And it's the one that devotees such as Lord Chaitanya relish eternally. All right? Now, you see, going back to our analogy of the net, these various yoga systems, when you're looking at that hand of Krishna, this is what showing the Bhagavatam is. It's directly clarifying this is Krishna's beautiful hand at the top of the yoga system. Right? And then furthermore, you can even go further and you can see his arm. And you can see his beautiful chest. Right? We see in the Nectar Devotion, actually, I'll read a quote talking about Krishna's beauty. It says, when Krishna arrived at the age of 13 to 14 years, his two arms and chest assumed an unspeakable beauty, and his whole form became simply enchanting. When Krishna attained 13 years of age, his two thighs were challenging the trunks of elephants. His rising chest, he's buffed, right, was trying to come to peace talks with the doors of jewels, and his two arms were minimizing the value of the bolts found upon doors. So they're very strong, right? Who can describe the wonderful beauty of these features of Krishna? The special beauty of Krishna's body was his mild smiling, his restless eyes, and his world-enchanting songs. These are the special features of this age. So as you move upward, seeing the form of Krishna, the person of Krishna, which is not different than his body, eventually you come to his face. Just like the Srimad Bhagavatam, it begins with these 2 feet. Right, cantos 1 and 2, and then gradually you make your way towards the face of Krishna, which is the 10th canto. Just like when you go to see the deities, you begin by looking at the feet of the deities, and then you see the legs of the deities, and the waist of the deities, the chest of the deity, and eventually the face. So these first cantos, they prepare you. They give you the spiritual foundation of knowledge of who Krishna is, so that when you see his beautiful face, you'll relish it with the proper understanding. You'll have entrance to it. Right? And also in the Nectar Devotion describing the face of Krishna, it says, sometimes the gopis would think about his soft nails, his moving eyebrows, and his teeth, which were katechu colored from chewing pan. So they're red. He has reddish teeth. Right? And as we heard, he's playing his flute, and his eyes are always dancing back and forth, and his eyebrows as well. Krishna is very animated. He's Vidagdha Madhava. He's like an actor. Right? You've seen these actors, like in Bharatnatyam, they're always making faces and everything. So when Krishna is playing with his friends or with the gopis or whatever, he's always making faces, and he's always joyful and expressive. Right? He's very animated. So one description was given by a gopi to her friend. My dear friend, see how the enemy of Aga has assumed such wonderful features. His brows are just like the bow of Cupid, and they are moving just as though they were dancing. The tips of his nails are so soft, it is as if they were dried bamboo leaves, so very delicate, right? His teeth are reddish because of chewing the pan, and so it appears that he has assumed a feature of anger. So when Krishna is smiling, he's got these red teeth. So it looks like, a ferocious, angry feature, but it's because he's chewing pan. So anyway, the Srimad Bhagavatam and its highest feature, in other words, like the very source of this beauty, the very source of this light, is the beauty of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna. And so that's what Srila Vyasadeva was prepared to present and to shine as a light into the darkness of Kali Yuga. So I wanted to finish by reading one shloka from the 12th canto. Srimad Bhagavatam Padana Mamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmid Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Yiyate Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naiskarmyam Aviskritam Tatshrinvan Supatan Vicharana Pado Bhakta Vimuchendadaha. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the processes of transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. So this is also the power of the Bhagavatam. Not only does it draw you upward from material attachment and illusion, and it brings you to the lotus feet of Krishna. But if you study this and understand it, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha, you will achieve liberation from material existence. By performing devotional service and by chanting Hare Krishna and studying literatures like the Srimad Bhagavatam, you can feel, right? Ask any devotee here, you can practically feel that over the years, you're being dragged out of material existence by the power of Krishna consciousness. So what is this effect in our lives? It's the light of Krishna, right? It's that association with Krishna. And that's essentially what Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's non-different from Krishna. It's Krishna personally. He is Krishna. So thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. I liked your description of the net that you were talking about, and so my question is, as someone who goes on Sankirtan and tries to win people in, I feel like the way we do it, the way I've been taught to do it, is to use those lures that you were talking about, like the lower systems of yoga, meditation, the way that we present that sort of thing, and then as you kept talking, you said something about that we're supposed to present Krishna in his fullness, not a watered-down version or a filtered version. And I was wondering, are we doing the right thing according to the literature for giving that sort of soft sell with yoga and meditation, not really going into a lot of detail about Krishna? And according to what's been said, and also, if you happen to know, were we taught to do this by Prabhupada? Was that Prabhupada's method for getting people in through the sort of the side door, if you will, to the lower forms of yoga?
Okay, thank you for your question. So I'll direct the second question to devotees such as Brigupati. We should take advantage of this wonderful experience and association of devotees who are immersed in this topic for like 30, 40 years. Like when you're distributing books for 30 or 40 years, that's a tremendous achievement, right? And there's a certain realization there which is extremely valuable. It's more valuable than any theoretical idea. But as far as the first question of sort of soft selling things, so yes, that's perfectly appropriate. There's, from my understanding, there's a certain technique that you may use, because if you just come up and say, hi, this is about Krishna, they're just like, oh, what the heck is that? They have no idea what you're talking about, right? And even as a devotee, when you begin reading the books, sometimes it takes a while before you even understand what it's saying, right? Because it's kind of like your consciousness is so dimmed that it's like you can't understand, what to speak of the complexities of Sanskrit and stuff like that. Even the concepts are too difficult to understand. So there's a certain way in which you have to speak in a language in which people understand. And it is, this is yoga, right? And so you're, in a sense, you're meeting them on a level, they know what yoga is, they've heard the word, right? And so you're presenting it in a language they understand, and it is true It's not like a falsehood. This is yoga, but that's kind of like they're familiar with that term, and they're familiar to that degree of what yoga is, and so you're sort of meeting them on that level, and then trying to bring them upward, right? So you're speaking to them on a level and in a language they can understand. But there's another level of this, that it's not just simply the words you're speaking, but it is your own devotion. If you look at great devotees like Gauri Dasi and devotees we have even in this temple room, it's not so much that some kind of technique they're using. That's there. The technique is important too, but it's really their own prayer to Krishna and their association with Krishna, their realization, their sincerity. Like I've been on book distribution before with Vaisheshika Prabhu, and it's miraculous, the things he does. It has nothing to do with the technique. Like I've been walking on Telegraph Avenue with him in Berkeley, and there's, I'm trying to distribute books like a fool, and people are just like, get out of my way, ram me with their shoulder, But with him, it's like, I remember I saw one person walking across the street, and like he just called to them and said like, excuse me, like that. And like they stopped where they were in the street and turned around and walked all the way back to him, right? And they were just kind of like almost trapped by him. And all he did was say, excuse me, and then he said, we have this book here, it's about, spiritual knowledge. And that was enough. But I could see that it wasn't really any technique. It was his own spiritual effulgence. Like he's actually like very bright, and you can feel that effulgence. You can feel that purity, that beauty, that sincerity, and above all, that interest and care in the individual. Right? They felt like a connection with him, and they're willing to walk 20 feet, 30 feet to come talk to him. And so that has nothing to do with, and he didn't even say, this is yoga or meditation or anything. It was just him. It was his own spiritual potency. And that potency comes from his sadhana and his surrender to Srila Prabhupada. And so it's that potency which actually distributes the book. And then the technique is just a way for you to interact. That's like on a lower platform. It's just the kind of normal social interaction. And so by using the term yoga or meditation, it's a way in which you're sort of meeting them in a language that you can mutually communicate through. But it's not that's distributing book. It's your own personal qualities as a devotee. That's what they're interested in. Maybe, and if some other devotees would like to say something about that, but also specifically address the second question about whether or not Prabhupada advocated for certain techniques. Bhrigupati Prabhu, would you like to say something?
Yeah, but Prabhupada authorized both methods of distribution on different occasions. There's letters and there's statements where Prabhupada would say things to the effect that distribute the book on the merit of the book. That's definitely there. And I would say that's probably the best way to go about it. If you can do that successfully, you don't need to do anything else. But if you're feeling, for whatever reason, that you either can't do that or you think maybe something else might be more effective, go for it, because Prabhupada also authorized that. He was asked about giving out lollipops once, something like that. And he said, yeah, well, no problem, just something to get him, make the people favorable, or some little brochure or something like that. Once there was something came up about Tripurari was saying something about these books will solve the energy crisis, and they asked Prabhupada, is that okay? And Prabhupada said, yeah, sure, it's advertising. Just like sometimes people advertise, put this thing on your head and your hair will grow back. And Prabhupada said, there's no thing that, there's no product that'll, but it's advertising. It's not, it's okay. It's what's done to promote a product. So Prabhupada, as I said, he authorized both approaches on different occasions. And I would say that, better if you feel like you can just distribute the book on the merit of the book, that's best. And if you're feeling not confident about that, then do whatever you have to do. That was authorized by Prabhupada. It's, depending upon the realization of the distributor.
Okay, thank you so much. Archita Prabhu has a comment.
Time, place, and circumstance. The presentation of this philosophy is a gradual, systematic approach. Krishna doesn't start out right away by saying Sarvadharam Parityajya. He chastises Arjuna and talks about you're not this body. So Prabhupada presented Krishna consciousness in that way also. He didn't jump immediately to the conclusion. He started out, you're not this body. And in certain circumstances, he wouldn't go beyond that. Like that famous talk with Cardinal Daniello. He would not go beyond the meat-eating problem. The Cardinal was saying, well, can't we talk about something? No. Why are you killing the poor animals? So depending on time, place, and circumstance, Prabhupada would either stick into one spot but generally he would do it in a very systematic, gradual way. If you can't appreciate that you're not this body and that you're suffering in this material world, where's the question of talking about, the ultimate reality? So that should be our approach in general, to present the thing in a very gradual, systematic way. Now, right here in Los Angeles on a walk, devotees were saying, Prabhupada, when we tell people about principles and that, they become turned off. Prabhupada slammed his cane and said, why are you surprised? You're preaching to cats and dogs. Make them fortunate. How? By giving them the Hare Krishna mantra, by giving them prasadam. So it's a whole culture that we're presenting. We don't expect that people are going to immediately be interested in Radha Krishna in the proper way. Yes, as some boyfriend, girlfriend, yes, everybody's interested in that. But the understanding that this is the ultimate reality of the divine couple, no. So we start gradually. Festivals, chanting in the street. This is why Harinam is a must. Prabhupada said you must go out and chant in the street. We can't stop that. In certain parts of ISKCON, people are trying to stop that. Oh, that was so 1960s, 70s. No, it's absolutely essential. Because the more the vibration goes out there, the more people become purified subtly. They don't even realize it. It takes time. There was in New York one case where devotees used to go and chant in the subways every day. Times Square. If anybody been to New York knows it's like a hellish planet going in the subway in New York. And there was one newspaper distributor, bookseller, books and newspapers. He hated them. Get out of here. Stop that noise. Get out of here. And when they would try to distribute books, he would break up the sales. After a year or two of going to the same spot, the guy completely changed. He would stop people and say, buy their books. They're very good people. So this is the power of chanting Hare Krishna. It transforms people. Makes them actually, turns them from being inimical to being, wanting to be devotees.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if I may just say one thing very quickly, and just to sort of support what you're saying, is that there's a certain qualification to come to knowledge, like transcendental knowledge, even presented in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not just simply you hear it and understand it. You have to actually become qualified to understand it. And so that does take time. Therefore, we have to understand that not everyone's qualified to understand immediately. So you present it sometimes, as Archita Prabhu said, you start with the basics and get people qualified, and then you explain to them the more intricate details. Okay? I'm sorry, Prabhu. I would like to, but we're out of time. Thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.